really think about what is important now, what are the things that I can let go. That it's sort of a pejorative that, don't sweat the small stuff and things like that. But by, being able to do, maybe it's some woodworking and or the music and or the writing, and or family travel or travel with friends, and, just trying to find so that whatever it is that's sort of getting to you that's outside of your control, that you can find those things that help you to work through it.
Welcome to Imagined Here, where you will hear stories of local creative talent. Let's get started with your host, Andy Crowner.
I am really excited to bring you this interview today. Pete Damiano is the lead vocalist, harmonica player, and band manager of the band Home Brewed, based out of Iowa City. Pete is also the director of the Public Policy Center for the University of Iowa, a professor in the College of Dentistry, and is a practicing dentist. One really cool thing about Home Brewed is that most of their gigs are done to raise money for local organizations and nonprofits. I hope you're ready because Pete's about to drop a lot of life experience and wisdom on us in this great interview. Hey, before we get started, take just a second to subscribe to the Imagined Here podcast, and please share this episode with your friends to help us to continue to promote local creatives. Now, on to the interview with Pete Damiano. Welcome to Imagined Here. Pete Damiano, lead vocalist and harmonica player, as well as band manager from the band Home Brewed, based out of Iowa City, Iowa. Pete is also the director of the Public Policy Center for the University of Iowa and a professor of the College of Dentistry. Welcome to Imagined Here, Pete.
Thank you, Andy. Pleasure to be on the show.
That is quite a mouthful for your introduction, but Pete, just tell us a little bit about yourself, the Home Brewed band, and give us a little glimpse into your personal life.
Sure. As you allude to, I've got sort of a varied professional career and with the balance of the band. So first went through dentistry, spent a couple of years on the Indian Health Service, on the Navajo Reservation, got some research training, came back on the faculty, and have had a joint appointment between the College of Dentistry and the Public Policy Center the whole time. And about 12 years ago, became director of the center. And I like to say I'm the only dentist in the world that runs a public policy center, and I haven't had anybody question me on that one yet. And so in that role, it does sort of engage me with people outside the university all the time. We do research to help inform policy, as well as then share that information and involve students in a lot of what we're doing. And so I've always had sort of an interest in things outside. The music thing came more recently. And so when I was young, my mom was told that I had perfect pitch by a teacher, pushed me to sing. I was a stubborn teenage boy, said, forget it. Took me 35, 40, 45 years, whatever it was, to grow up enough to really seriously think about music, and had messed around with the harmonica along that way. Went down to Clarksdale, Mississippi, did a harmonica jam camp for a week. Wasn't really sure what I was going to do with it. Came back, got a few guys together, and it's grown over the last 5 years. So now we've got a 10-piece bluesy rock and roll band that's multi-generational, some students, some retired folks, some folks in the middle, and we do a lot of benefit concerts for groups all around Eastern Iowa and even going up to Milwaukee in a few weeks.
So Pete, take a minute and let's talk about what you do at the University of Iowa before we get into the Home Brewed band. And I saw you were an author of more than 200 journal articles, and you've been the principal investigator on more than 75 funded research studies.
Right. And so my personal research is in the area of health policy and in something what's called health services research, where I study the healthcare system. Again, we're not advocates. We don't come and take positions on things, but we'll study things about access to care, quality of care, costs of care, health insurance, things with Obamacare, what's working, what isn't, what might improve it, We do a lot of work with our State Department of Human Services, looking at some of their Medicaid programs on what's working, what isn't. Do a lot of work on health disparities, and looking at, again, how we can improve things. And so I'm very fortunate that there's a lot of sort of creativity that I'm allowed. I have to go out and get research funding, and I've been fortunate to be able to get a lot of grants and contracts related to research, and have had a lot of really good people to work with, and have good teams of people to work with to be able to do this. But there really is sort of a creative side that we're given, and an entrepreneurial side, if you will, that as long as we get the funding and we're doing good work, and then you can get some more and you can publish and do your stuff and teach, it's really, I really love the flexibility of that within the university.
And you're also still clinically active, is that correct, as a dentist?
That is correct. I just stepped out of the clinic, in fact, after seeing patients all morning. So that helps. I still love it and enjoy it and enjoy the people. And then it also helps inform my research by remaining clinically active. So whether it's the questions that we're looking at or the interpretation, I think remaining clinical, even though a lot of the research that I do is not necessarily in dentistry, but some of it is in other aspects of primary care, it still helps, I think, to have that understanding as you're doing the research and studying things about like health insurance coverage, or how do people understand how to use it? How do they understand how to find it? Run into that all the time.
So with all of that on your plate and all those things that you're doing in your professional life, take me to the day that you actually decided, okay, I'm going to start this band and start making these phone calls to put this together. Take us to that day and how you made that decision.
Well, it goes back just a little bit from that, in that at the dental school, they were going to do a faculty staff fundraiser for a new building construction. And they were coming off of like 2 years of no raises, and they just wanted all the faculty and staff to be involved in giving, even $1 just to show that they're contributing. And then that helps when you're doing fundraising for other things. They weren't sure how to do it because of not coming off of a positive environment with raises and all this. Not that people were upset, but it's how do you ask for people, so they came up with this idea, let's do something fun. So instead of what's normally this boring OSHA in-service day, we did some of that. And then for about 2 months, they developed and wrote a play about the dental school and the construction and all of this, following on Mamma Mia and sort of modifying it. And I don't know why they came to me and asked if I would sing the solo for this. And being silly and not very smart, I said, sure, when I'd never ever sung in public. And so I did this. Then people didn't throw anything at me, which is always the bar that I set. Ended up joining the church choir, taking some vocal lessons. And then from there went, to that harmonica jam camp I mentioned. And it's been great.
So I saw on your webpage that the band actually plays at a lot of nonprofit and fundraising events.
Right, exactly. And so we really, feel that we've been very fortunate, and this is our way of giving back. And to date, in the last 5 years, I try to track that in the events. And a lot of these are events that will come to these organizations and say, hey, would you like us to do some? Sometimes it'll be like the local shelter house for the homeless. They have an annual barbecue bash, as they call it, and they invited us to do it. And they've got, the organization in place, and it's been going for a few years and will be the live entertainment. A lot of other ones, like one coming up this Sunday, which is it's an effort called the Greatest Small City of the Arts in Iowa City to support the Englert and film scene. So again, other artistic endeavors. And we work with the Mill frequently, a music venue in Iowa City that many people are probably aware of, and found an open date. And so we're helping to both organize this as well as then perform at it. And we just did one recently for the neighborhood centers of Johnson County for low-income kids and the domestic violence intervention program. And on the ones that we've sort of been the driving force, we've raised over $100,000 in the last 4 or 5 years. On the ones we participated in, it's more like $250,000. So we feel very fortunate to be able to do this. It gives us a chance to play music, have fun, give back, and, help a lot of groups in need.
And that is absolutely fantastic. Now, when you were first getting started, do you kind of have that fear of stepping out and playing in public? And especially as a professional with all the titles behind your name, right? Did you have that fear of kind of people's perception of you in the business world?
I'm not so sure about the fear of me in the business world, but was it scary to get out and do that? Absolutely. It was the scariest thing I ever did. So when I mentioned that I joined the church choir and started taking some lessons from our choir director. And then in the Catholic Church, there's a role called the cantor that gets up in the middle and does these solo things. And when I joined the church choir, I was just thinking I would just sit in the back of the church and, throw out a few bass notes. I didn't really even know what a 4-part harmony was exactly. And then after taking some lessons, he's like, okay, now you're going to start cantering. I'm like, what are you, nuts? No, I'm not going to do that. And sure enough, and it would take me about 3 weeks to get ready and get out there. And yeah, it was the scariest thing that I was doing. And, obviously, like with everything, you do it more frequently. And now, it's not a big deal. But absolutely the performing and the, going to that harmonica jam camp. I was down there with 25 people from literally around the world with 5 faculty instructors and a backup band. And I'd never really performed in public or anything. And you just sort of jump right in. And yeah, it's absolutely scary, but it's also really invigorating. And I think that putting ourselves outside our comfort zone at all ages, but particularly as we get older, is really important. And I've been blessed to not have a huge fear of failure. I like to think of it as, but it does mean it's not scary. It absolutely is.
One thing, people listening to this that are getting started or want to start creating is they have that fear of failure. And I think it's important that we show that, we've all kind of failed at times and learned lessons from it. And, have you had a moment in the music career where you've kind of failed and learned something?
Oh, I think we learn from depending on what you want to call a failure, but by mistakes. And, I'm not musically trained, through life. And so that sort of puts me in a different position. My knowledge of music theory, is very limited, if you will. And sure, just bringing people together who do know these things and being willing, and playing with them and knowing that I may be off on this or I may not understand that. I guess you could look at it as a failure, but I'd like to think of it more as an opportunity to learn and grow. And it sounds almost corny or pejorative or something, but it really isn't. And if there have been times that I've screwed up or pick up the wrong key harp on a song, or whatever it is, or start in the wrong note, or we've got one guy that occasionally on this one song, he'll start on the wrong note and then it sets me off the wrong note on my vocals. And yeah, you kind of just learn how to go with that after a while. But yeah, I guess depending on how you want to define that failure, I've done it, bunches of times. And I also like to think I'm fairly blessed with not having a great memory for those kinds of things. So it's easier for me to let that go.
That's exactly why I like to ask that question. Is anybody that's interested in starting, they just need to understand that those moments are going to happen, and it's okay. It happens to all of us. So,
absolutely. And that's part of the beauty of live music too. Yeah, you can put on a CD or stream something all you want and it's going to sound the same. But, with live music, every time you do it, it's going to be a little bit different. And there's going to be times you like it more than, sometime that you didn't or something. And you also have to kind of learn that the audience doesn't hear a lot of our mistakes, if you will. We might know we're off a little or something like that. And most people aren't paying attention close enough that they're going to do that. And so there's no sense beating yourself up over that or worrying about that. You just kind of go on. And another part of, I guess I'll say the creativity of what I like to do is woodworking and home remodeling and building furniture and things. And for anyone who's listening who's ever done that, you always know your mistakes, and you know that that corner wasn't exactly right, or that's not exactly square the way I wanted it. But most people looking at that are never going to see those things, and you kind of have to learn that every time you look at it, you're going to see it, and it's like, eesh. And if I were to listen, I don't like to go back and listen to our stuff that much because I'm going to hear the mistakes. I remember Frank Sinatra saying that he hated to listen to his singing because all he heard was the mistakes. But you just move on and you learn and you grow, and and that's what's so much fun about it.
So Pete, take a moment and tell us a story about kind of the biggest moment you've had in your musical career so far, and what that meant to you.
Sure. So there's really two. One was this summer where we were asked to play at the Friday Night Concert Series, which is in downtown Iowa City. And that was a pretty big deal. And it was the night that they were opening the new stage. And the reception that we got, both from the organizers and the crowd there, was great. And what was really kind of interesting about that is the guy that invited us, I could tell at the beginning, he wasn't 100% sure if he had done the right thing by inviting us or not for this, and this timing was kind of a big deal. And about halfway through, I'm over there looking at him, and he's got this big smile on his face, and he came up and said some nice things, and afterwards he was like, "Oh man, this is just great. You guys were just perfect for this." And so that was very cool. Then last year we went up to Milwaukee, and which is where I'm originally from, and did a benefit for a child care center up there that's right in the heart of downtown Milwaukee. It has a lot of special needs kids, where my cousin's daughter worked. And it was at one of the top venues in the city, but we were able to do this because the guy who owns it is a place called Linneman's, for anyone who knows Milwaukee music. And it's an old corner tavern with this back room on it that Jim Linneman has been running for 25 years, and he grew up across the street from me. So it was very cool that I was able to play at his venue and be able to play in front of a lot of family and friends that had never heard us play before. And so it was a really special opportunity. These are friends from grade school, from high school, both sides of the family, as well as some other folks. And Jim does such a phenomenal job with it, and he works the sound himself. And it made it really easy for us to play, and the crowd was into it, and it was very cool.
While we're talking about some local venues and events, what's some of the favorite kind of places that people here locally could go and hear music?
Well, the Mill is iconic, if you will, in Iowa City. Been around for 50 plus years. If people aren't familiar with it, it's right downtown near the corner of Clinton Street and Burlington. And they get all kinds of types of music and have been very supportive of the benefit concerts that we do. It really is kind of a win-win. We'll often do these, like the one this Sunday for the Greatest Small City of the Arts. So it'll be at 4:30 on a Sunday when they're usually fairly quiet. But it will then bring people in that wouldn't normally be there, as well as for whatever the benefit is for. And so that's a really win-win. So we really enjoy playing at the Mill. And a lot of the other ones, we play around in different places that may or may not always have music. So every year we do a benefit for the UI student veterans, and there's about 2,000 veterans and plus their dependents on campus. And we've been able to raise over $30,000 for that group over the last 4 years. And we've done that at the local VFW, and then now we're going to be moving to the Eagles Club this spring. Gabe's is another place that, will often frequently have music. Big Grove is another place in Iowa City that tends to have music. But often we'll be doing them at some of these events at places that aren't just regular music venues. And so we'll have to, bring our own sound system, which is something I never expected I would ever be doing, having a mixer and multiple speakers and monitors and learning all about XLR cables and all that stuff. But it's been great.
So Home Brewed plays kind of a bluesy rock and roll and plays some Johnny Cash and Eric Clapton and some originals and some newer stuff as well. But for just you yourself, who has influenced you musically? Yeah,
my tastes in music have always been very eclectic, if you will. And if anybody watched the Ken Burns country music series, it was just on, or can stream it online or whatever. If you haven't seen it and love music and love the history of music, I'd really suggest doing it. And it really just shows the influence of country and gospel and blues and rockabilly, and how these all, really come together and are influential, and that all of the artists love all types of music. I think we get so often stuck into genres and I only like this or I only like that, rather than, that's really good music and that's really good songwriting, and the lyrics are great, or that's a beat that it just, really hits me. And so I've always enjoyed everything from, blues to traditional Muddy Waters, B.B. King kind of stuff, Eric Clapton and the sort of that bluesy rock and roll kinds of things, the whole rockabilly. That Johnny Cash is another one. And in that show, they just talk his life and what he did for music and culture and race, is pretty incredible. The foundation of Sun Records, which was really originally Sam Phillips wanted to be able to provide African-American musicians with an opportunity to record in a way that they didn't at that time, and then ended up to be financially successful, found Elvis and blah, blah, blah. And then modern indie stuff, Nathaniel Rateliff and the Night Sweats, Kaleo. There's some great bluesy indie bands. That's one of the fun things about being a multi-generational band and having the young people in the band and being able to learn from them some of the music that they like. And then that's influenced, not only the things that I've liked and listened to, but the things we're playing. And I think we're then able to introduce some of that. And this goes back to my role as a teacher, if you will, a faculty member. It's fun to introduce the crowd to some of these groups. And when some of them know some of the more obscure ones like J.J. Gray and Mofro, who are a blues band out of Jacksonville, which are great, or Kaleo, or, it's fun that the audience, for them to see us doing some of those things.
So as you look forward to the next couple of years with Home Brewed, what kind of goals do you have for the future of the band?
Well, we're right now working on, again, some more original things, which has really been a lot of fun. We've got a couple of them that we're playing right now. One's called The Devil in My Soul. Another one is Spirit of Hope, which is based on a couple of quotes from Martin Luther King. And sort of a little bit, when I think of the blues and bluesy rock, the vibe of blues, there's sort of the dark and the light in it. And looking at some of those things, I just wrote a gospel song that wanted work into a 3 or 4 part harmony. And so that's really expanding our repertoire, doing some more original things. I'd love to be able to cut a CD at some point, and really just continue. It's a challenge, as anyone who's been in a band knows, holding it together. People's life, where they're at, changes. We've now had to, because we've got such a large group and we play fairly frequently, we have to have multiple backups at all positions, and they have to be the kind of person who's willing to do this, as a fundraiser. We're incredibly I feel fortunate that we don't have to make money off of the music. There's a lot of musicians that's their life and that's what they have to do. Kevin Bird is a good friend of mine. If those of you who are familiar with Kevin, won the International Blues Competition a few years ago, and he's got to hustle like crazy to be able to make money. We have the real advantage of doing the fun part of it, as I think about it, and playing the music and exploring the music. And those are the things that I really like to just see us continue to do and grow. Our goal isn't like to go national or anything like that, but it's just to continue for all of us to develop a little bit more and think about new styles of music, which is just a lot of fun.
So stepping away from just talking about the band a minute, and just tell me some of the best advice you've ever been given.
Well, one of the things that I think about when you want to sort of determine, is this something to have a lot of angst about? Is this something that's really going to matter in 6 months or not? And often it allows you to just sort of let things go. a lot easier. And there are things that are weighty and you need to deal with and are challenging and are, everything living the life of the songs we're singing kind of thing. And then there's other things that, stress is mostly what we do to ourselves. And so if there are ways to just let those things go because they really aren't going to matter in the long run, I think that's one of the really important lessons. And I think this other thing about constantly trying to be comfortable going outside of your comfort zone and not be afraid of embarrassing yourself. Again, you have to judge that, and the person has to judge when that opportunity, and it's not certainly something that you do all the time, and it doesn't mean that you don't care about what you're doing or that you don't try to do it the best that you can. But if there are times when you can do that, and just be comfortable with that, so that you can grow to the next level, that's something that's really important.
So Pete, one thing we've noticed is that a lot of podcast listeners also really like to read and listen to audiobooks. So do you have any book recommendations besides probably your 200 journal articles that our listeners can go check out?
I'd only recommend those if you're having trouble sleeping.
Right.
I personally am a mystery. I like mysteries. I like things like Jack Reacher, the books by Lee Child. Michael Conley writes some interesting things in terms of, books and some music books. There's actually this book that for people who are interested in music about the history of Sun Records is really fascinating.
Imagine to your listeners, we know that you like audiobooks, so we've teamed up with Audible to bring you a special offer. Visit imaginedhere.com/audible for a free 30-day Audible trial and 2 free audiobooks. You can cancel at any time, and you get to keep your audiobooks forever. So go on over to imaginedhere.com/audible, and you can get your free 30 days and 2 audiobooks right now.
A lot of the stuff that I'm going to read is a little bit to balance, and I think, and we haven't talked about this directly, but there's so many things in life that you're going to do that are directly related to your career or professional life. And then there's other things that I think are just really important to balance, and how to balance and make those things more tolerable. So, if things are challenging at the university, and there are always challenges in people's lives and things like that, that the music is something that you can do to balance those things. And I do want to give a shout out to my wife and family, and they've been very supportive as I've been going off on these, somewhat crazy things that do take a fair amount of time. And that's also really important to have that kind of support, even if they might roll their eyes occasionally, probably appropriately so. That kind of support, and it, is really important for all of us. And then I think within the band, providing support to each other is also really important as people are going through rough times.
Well, let's take a minute and talk about that balance of life. Do you have a way that you kind of make sure that you're keeping yourself in balance in all areas?
I don't know any idea how you really do that, other than, again, really think about what is important now. What are the things that I can let go? That it's sort of a pejorative that, don't sweat the small stuff and things like that. But by being able to do maybe it's some woodworking and or the music and or the writing, and or family travel or travel with friends, and just trying to find, so that whatever it is that's sort of getting to you that's outside of your control, that you can find those things that help you to work through it. I'm teaching a class with some freshmen who are all first generation students. That they're all Iowa residents, and so they're not as familiar with the university and going to college. And so part of this is getting them to do some experiential learning and service learning, getting it outside the university. That might be something that's going to directly help them to identify what their career might be, or it might be something that's going to balance that. So maybe they're a microbiology major, and that's just a really tough thing to do. But if they get outside and they work at the domestic violence intervention program, or they work at the shelter house, or they work at the food bank, that they're going to then sort of appreciate how well they've got it. And it helps you to get through those difficult times.
I like that. I'm actually the president of our local school board here, and I could see taking that down into the high school level and doing the same thing there.
Absolutely. And that's part of one of our plans, is to try to do some more of that, and sharing some of the resources and the expertise of the university with the high schools around the state in a way that we haven't consistently to this point. But I do think there's a lot of opportunities. And the high school students are stressed too. Being human is stressful, and just trying to figure out what it is that I want to do, and feeling like I should know what this path is, even though life doesn't work that way. And this is something that I try to get across with the college students all the time, because their parents are trying to be helpful, but often, everybody always asks, what are you going to do? What's your major? All those kinds of things. And then, but life's not a straight line. You're going to get nudged, this way or that. If I had gotten asked about singing in that dental school fundraiser, I don't know if the rest of the music would have happened, and I never would have seen that coming. Even though it might have been in the back, sometimes we need that nudge to do some things, and sort of being patient enough to allow that to happen. And I think that's true at the high school level too, that high school students, where are you going to go to college, or where are you going to go, what kind of job are you going to get if you're not going to college, which is fine. And, there's this pressure, and some students, college is not the right thing. There's other opportunities. We need lots of people in the trades right now, and there's great opportunities for, trades union and learning and getting it, instead of living to work, you're working to live. And all of those, I think, are really important to figure out how to do that at all levels. So thank you for your service as part of the school board.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we don't get a whole lot of thank yous. A lot of times we just kind of get yelled at. But
Right, exactly.
One thing I wanted to take a minute and talk about, we were kind of talking about it pre-show, is just the being able to start creating no matter where you're at in life. And, maybe you are a professor and doing all those things, but still, have that want and desire to go out and do some woodworking or create a band or whatever people want to do. And so I just want to have you take a minute and talk about kind of following those dreams.
Right. And this is that idea that life is not linear, and you're not on this path that you can't get off of. And that as long as I think we're always willing, so I'm going to turn 60 this fall, and the band I've only been doing for 5 years, and the music for maybe a year or two before that. And that you're still open to when you get nudged in some of these things, is it often feels like, well, this is, I would have loved to have done that, but I can't. And for some things, maybe that's true. I mean, my NBA career is over, but for other things, there's still lots of opportunities to, again, there's lots of levels that you can do things too at in it. And whether it's, I've always wanted to learn the piano, but, and it might be that, say you've got a young family and it may not be the right time. So much of these things I think are related to timing and when is the right time in your life. The stuff I'm doing now, I never could have done when our boys were younger and in school and active with those kinds of things. But once kind of got past that, then there's a little bit more time to do some of these things that are a little bit more creative and time consuming. And so you just never know, whatever point in life you're at, where it might be.
That's a great lesson, even just for me, because I've got a lot of things on my list I'd still love to do someday. I'm not playing in a band at this moment, but I've been a drummer my whole life, and I'd love to get back to playing music. And I'd love to coach basketball at some point in time, and I just haven't had the time to do that yet. But I hope to get those done someday, and I've got plenty of years left to do them.
Yeah, I mean, that's a perfect example. And our band is actually a perfect example, not just me. We have a sousaphone / baritone sax player. Well, he was a sousaphone major in college, didn't play for 35 years. He did instrument repair, but never used it. Joined the band, is having a blast, now learning the bari sax. We've got a retired orthopedic surgeon who, did some music here and there on the side, and now he's able to flourish. The whole group is really made up of people like that. There's nobody that's music is their number one thing. But they have a passion for it, really wanted to do it, and are the right kind of people to be a part of a band where you're not going to make a bunch of money. And so it's for everyone in our band, it really is that. And I keep getting, requests from somebody that, hey, I'm a medical resident and whatever. And I always tuck those away because you just never know where you're going to need somebody. Somebody can't show up or something. It happens all the time. We had a fill-in drummer who he hadn't drummed in 4 years, but clearly had some skill from before and came back to him pretty quick. And, we're not going to get on him because he missed something here or there. We feel very fortunate that he's willing to sit in with us a couple times, and now he's going to do a little bit more. And so that's really important.
Thank you very much, Pete, for being with us here today. I feel like I'm taking time away from, fixing somebody's teeth or going out and finding money for some research project. But I just want fans to know they can head over to imaginedhere.com and type Pete or Home Brewed into the search bar, and the show notes page will pop up with all the information we talked about today. And Pete, I just want you to take a couple minutes, leave us with kind of a parting piece of guidance, and let fans know how they can connect with you and Home Brewed.
Sure. I think what we just talked about, that just be open to new things that come up and be willing to try and not worry about the failure is just huge. And hopefully from a lot of people in this series, I'm sure the message will be similar, something about that. In terms of folks who want to see us or follow us, we have a website, homebrewedic for Iowa City.com. We also have a Facebook page. You can reach out to me through those. We're going to all of our gigs are up on there. We play probably an average of twice a month. It just depends on what's going on, sometimes more, sometimes less. We will be at the Mill, as I mentioned earlier, this Sunday at 4:30 for the Greatest Small City of the Arts, which is the Engler Theater and Film Scene Movie Theater fundraiser. And we'll be back at the Mill on December 15th for the local food bank, which we've done now 4 or 5 years in a row. And Kevin Burt will be playing with us. And if you've never seen Kevin, it's a real treat.
Well, thank you again, Pete, for being with us today. And I hope everybody will jump over and check out those dates and come see a show. And thank you just in general for all the work you're doing for us Iowans, all the money you're raising for people right here. So thank you for being with us.
Yeah, well, thank you, Andy. I appreciate you putting the series together and reaching out to me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Imagined Here. Take just a second and please like, share, and subscribe to this podcast. We'll see you in the next episode.